Hey guys, it's your favorite Vel'Koz main with a Vel'Koz guide for Season 11. You probably clicked on this video because you're struggling right now with Vel'Koz in Season 11, which, let's be real, he's quite weak right now. But I'll show you a couple of ways and the best builds how you can squeeze out every bit of possible impact from Vel'Koz. I don't want to make this too long and I will try to focus on Season 11 specifics right now, because if you want some really core stuff for Vel'Koz, you should probably watch my combo guide or my basic Vel'Koz guide. Those contain the very basic principles of how you should operate as a Vel'Koz. Now on to the Season 11. Long story short, Vel'Koz is weaker in Season 11. Why? Well, essentially the game is faster. There's a lot of variables, but generally the game is just much faster due to very proactive items. More proactive items, earlier spikes, faster games, not good for our Veli boy. Now how do we compensate it? By squeezing every bit of potential impact from this champion by using the best optimal setups. Vel'Koz is one of the very rare elo deflation champions in League ranked. So if you're struggling with Vel'Koz at specific elo, you probably belong slightly higher than that. By the way, thank you all for supporting the content. I really appreciate all the support you guys are providing on Patreon and Twitch TV. There's a lot of fun rewards on Patreon if you are looking to support. Also, from now on, my YouTube revenue will be cut by 30%. Hooray, YouTube! So I will be entertaining possibility of turning off ads completely, given that I don't get many views and the revenue is already negligible, because I'm going negative with YouTube either way. So I don't even know if it's worth to badger you guys with any ads. I'll keep you posted. Okay, on to the specifics. What summoners should you run? Is teleport okay? Yes, kinda in competitive. I would not really advise teleport for low elo because the game is too fast and people really don't know how to use teleport. Every time I'm coaching, teleport is misused. So below Diamond Plus, I generally wouldn't run teleport, especially because it extremely falls off on mages mid to late game and you won't have any chances to use it ever. So for solo queue, I would usually suggest going with a bit more of a selfish route. So you want a summoner spell that only benefits you. Versus most matchups, you will be running Barrier. It has the most utility versus these bursty matchups, and believe me, everyone will burst you in Season 11. So getting that short cooldown summoner spell is very nice to save you in a lot of spots. And also in lower elo, it will bait out enemies into really bad scenarios where they will miscalculate their damage. So I probably value Barrier the most in solo queue. Now, a lot of you are thinking now, what about heal? Heal is very specific due to the less general value of health conversion, and it has a longer cooldown. It's only used in specific matchups where the movement speed can outweigh the benefit of extra HP value. Now, the matchups you will be running heal in to substitute the barrier is something like Vector, because you can outrun his ultimate. You can run that against Cassio, because then she won't be able to follow up on a single Q and just destroy you. That way you eliminate all chance of counterplay by her. Heal can also be taken in response to the enemy jungler. Let's say they have a neutral mid laner which won't be running Ignite, so it won't be a big deal. So let's say you're playing versus Orianna, maybe you can outrun the Shockwave with heal, extra movement speed if you're fast enough. Plus they have something like Olaf where heal can kind of come in handy, you want to outrun his axes. So in that case it's fine to go, especially if you want to skirmish 2v2 with your jungler, the heal is very useful there. Second optional summoner spell you will be running sometimes is Cleanse. You take Cleanse versus Zoe, you take it versus TF, you take it versus Syndra, you take it versus any CC hard engage that can just stun lock you and make you instantly dead. It is generally used a bit more in higher elo because people will know how to demolish you. Let's say you're running without Cleanse versus Syndra Elise, and if they are past gold, they're just gonna camp you entire game literally and you don't get to play. So you kind of have to run it in that scenario. A lot of people are thinking about Exhaust as well, and I wouldn't really suggest Exhaust a lot. Exhaust is a very aggressive rune, actually. It's not very intuitive, but Exhaust is the more aggressive version of Barrier, because you generally use it offensively as Vel'Koz, because if you're in range to use Exhaust, you're probably pressuring the enemies. Because if you're in range to use it when they're attacking you, you're most likely already engaged and you're under a gank, so you probably die no matter who you exhaust. Also in a lot of matchups like let's say Fizz, Zed, all of them will bypass your exhaust because Fizz can utilize the E invulnerability to not be targeted, Zed will use ultimate, and before you exhaust you will take like already 60% of his entire damage, so it's kind of pointless. Now onto the runes and items. I'm going to show you some stuff I've created here. Okay, this is the most basic Vel'Koz mid lane ruined page. Is the most standard. It works across all elos. In high elo is pretty good. You notice we're substituting right now with Scorch, but where usually we use Gathering Storm. You can still opt in for Gathering Storm, but now that the games are a bit shorter, a bit more active, that early game Scorch usage may help. But if you're, again, looking to scale, you have a good late game, you can play with Gathering Storm. The differences are very minimal. Here we got the Transcendence for that extra ability haste. We got Mana Flow Band, which is insanely high value when you think about it, especially if you can pair it up with a tier. And here we got the Arcane Comet, which is the most standard Vel'Koz playstyle. Now there are variations you can run. Let's say if you want to go a bit more aggressive early game, you can get Absolute Focus. Gives you a bit more pressuring power early game. Let's say you want to play more late game, you can go like this. You play for Gathering Storm. Let's say you're playing versus something that's very strong early. Like let's say you're dealing with a LeBlanc and you don't want to fight her. You can take this very easily. So this is kind of the most standard one. Here, there is a very interesting option where you go into the Cosmic Insight. Cosmic Insight is a bit underrated. It's not as good as the Cosmic Insight before, but it does provide you that summoner spell cooldown. So let's say if you can pair this up with the Lucidity Boots, which are extremely cheap, and I'll show you that in the builds, you will have a lot of summoner spell cooldown. With this, your barrier goes on 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, 130 seconds if I'm remembering correctly. And your flash goes to 3 minutes and 50 seconds. 230 seconds if I'm remembering correctly. So it's kind of underrated when you pair it up like that. You will have summoners way more often. It's extremely deceptive if people are trying to time them, and you can deal with a lot of stuff. So this is like just don't die playstyle. You're staying alive, trying to be in the backline, providing that constant poke. Now here, quite interesting thing is we're going the attack speed instead of AP. The AP is not extremely necessary for wave clear, which I'll show you in the leveling scheme. You will be fine wave clearing like this or like this, it doesn't really matter. And the attack speed provides you a lot of the lane power early game, which means you will be missing less minions. It comes into full play in a bit higher elo where people are going to punish you at every single auto attack. In high elo, if you, let's say you do an auto attack on enemy and there's a minion falling low, they're going to go and hit you because you can't hit them because you're going to miss a minion. So that's when attack speed kind of comes in. You have less of a window to get punished. Also helps you with shoving, and especially versus melee matchups, you get to hit them more. And yeah, the rest is adaptive force and either MR or armor depending on who you're playing against. There's a one more aggressive version which is not as good this season, which is going cheap shot with the Ultimate Hunter. This is extremely aggressive if you want to get those stacks and a lot of CDR, but Ultimate Hunter now doesn't have insanely high value, so this is very risky for not too much reward. So I would just suggest you guys stick with this one or this one. You can even go with the Dematerializer here, just going 111, which is 666 extra %. All of these are pretty solid. Now on to the $1 million question. Azzapp, what is the best mythic for Vel'Koz? You know, and all those types of questions that I get on the daily. So I will show you here what you want to go. There are generally two types of builds for mid lane. Night Harvester, I wouldn't really recommend it. Night Harvester is more of a support stuff. But for mid lane, here are the two mythics that you want to run. Okay, now let's keep this one the default and the core. Okay, so what you want to do is you start with Doran's 2 potions, Stealth Ward, whatever, you don't have to buy it. If you leave the base, it appears in inventory. It's magic. These are the early items. And no matter what build you're going for, these early items are going to kind of remain the same. So I generally like to do this. Dark Seal, my favorite item in the game, it will help you play better, okay? You will be a better player with Dark Seal because you will die less. And I think that's a good thing. Then Lost Chapter, kind of core. These are your situationals. So those are your early items that you're going to go for. Now I'm going to skip this step and I'm going to show you the core. So this is what we're going to be doing. You will be rushing Ludens into Horizon Focus. Horizon Focus recently buffed. Ludens Tempest 11.6 live today, literally buffed. Okay, so it's not a huge buff. It's just a little bit of cooldown reduction, but it helps because again, people will have harder time tracking Ludens, and it's a very, very stealthy value that people won't really understand, because the more you decrease the cooldown, at more random times you're going to get movement speed, because usually people can predict your movement speed when you hit the minion, but let's say you do a full combo and then you get movement speed again after that. That will save you in a lot of clutch scenarios, and people won't really calculated in advance. It's a very abstract thing. Now, also, this is the core, so this is like a new Vel'Koz. You're getting a lot of magic penetration with this, and obviously, if you're doing this, I think I forgot to put here, Sorcerer Shoes. Sorcerer Shoes go in with this build, obviously. You want to get that instant punch. You want to just destroy them from maximum range with insane damage. Also, you hit them, you get vision on them, you deal more damage, get movement speed. Decent synergies all across the board, and you can do a lot of damage. Now, how would you finish this build? I'm so glad you asked, boys. The answer is simple. El Sombrero Mortfero de Rabadon. So obviously Death Cap is the best item to purchase third. Now there are pitfalls with the buying the Death Cap. It's extremely expensive. Now you don't really want to build Death Cap if you're living on welfare. If you have absolutely no money, if you don't have stable income and you're living off of those 2 minions you get every 2 waves on the bot lane because you're afraid to meet a split pusher. Now you take this generally when you're in a really good position and you're team fighting, you're strong, you're impactful, you're getting fed more and more so. That's when you want to get this, because it's a lot easier to go over these 3 big humps. 1250, 1250, 1100. Defensive items are really good in this season, extremely cheap, and even though their components have been nerfed, you don't quite care, because you don't really build Seekers nor Verdant Barrier that much. You generally just want the finished product. You either want the Stasis or you want the Spell Shield. So ideally you want to buy defensive item. If you have to buy it, you kind of buy it third. You don't want to buy it second if you can avoid it. There are some games where you're so far behind and you don't generally get to play unless you complete this item, so it's fine to get it second, but you just want to farm, get 2 aggressive items, and then go into defense. Obviously, if you don't need it, you don't go. You just get the Death Cap, and after that, you can build whatever you want. So let's say an example full build would be something like Sorcerer Shoes. You get the Luden's Tempest, you get the Horizon Focus, you get the Death Cap, then you upgrade to the Magi's, and here you get as the last item maybe Cosmic Drive. It gives you a lot of good value, extra movement speed, especially with the paired up with the Ludens. Now in this season also Morello is really good because everything heals except you. Everyone, literally everyone heals except you. So to make your poke a bit more meaningful, Morello is pretty clutch. Now there's a variant of this very exact build, is where you get by the tier very early on. Now you know this tier is not a starting item. A lot of people fall for this trick. They have to buy tier first item, which, oh, how am I gonna stack the tier ever in my life? It's not 750. You stack, it's not even 450, it's 360, okay? You stack tier like this. It's just, there's no point buying it first and crippling your early game, okay? So buy Dorans, always. Then you can recall, and on the first recall, even on the second recall, buying tier is fine. Now, let's say you want to scale, you're playing for a late game, you're playing a matchup where you can't really do too much early. You're dealing with Yasuo. You have trouble axing the wave, and you have to invest more mana than you have to for clear. You're playing versus Yone. It's tough to farm. You buy tier on first recall, it's fine. Totally fine. Compensates you mana, scales. Now, what happens when you get the full build? Now, you're going to get the same core. Sorc Shoes, Ludens, Horizon Focus, Archangel. You can even get Archangel instead of Horizon Focus as second. You're going to have like 300 plus AP already. And then after that, you kind of say, Horizon Focus, we push it back for late game. We get the Sombrero. With Sombrero and the Archangel Staff and the Ludens, you get 500 plus AP and you just demolish everyone. So that's kind of like the highest AP early build. Well, not early, it's kind of mid-game at that point already, but it's the best rush you can do for AP. Obviously, if you can pair Magi's within there, like, hell yeah, go for it. Okay, on to the second build, and this is the Lion Race variation. Lion Race is more of a backup build, and I wouldn't suggest it every game, because in this season, poke doesn't mean too much. Everyone heals, everyone sustains, there's just so much stuff going on. That Lion Race poke is not as meaningful as before. So I would prefer the Assassin variation, where you can actually close out a kill when you start, except instead of relying on teammates. Generally better in solo queue. Unless you're playing competitive, then, I don't know, you might want to go Lion Race. But when in general you want to go for the substitute, let's say they have a lot of tanks, let's say they have a shit ton of healing, and you really want to deny it. The best way to do it, Lion Race into Oblivion Orb. 7 seconds, okay? Instead of 3, this is 7 seconds heal reduction, because Lion Race extends by extra 4. Now in that variation you can do Ionian Boots of Lucidity, so you have more CDR, and then The second item, these are all just tiny items. The second item, you get Cosmic Drive. And that's such a very cool variation where you're already 90 plus ability haste. You're almost at 50% CDR, okay, with 2.5 items. 50% CDR, that was undoable in previous season. In this one, you can get it that early. Now, what that does is like, it's really good at chipping away at tanks, it's really good at chipping away versus healing targets, and it's more like a supportive mid lane playstyle. Your job in the team fight is to tap everyone. Hit them, tap them, they get healing reduced, and your team kind of wipes them clean. So again, this is a bit more reliant on your team, so I would advise the other one, but it's a decent recovery. So yeah, just one more thing, the item I didn't mention anything about, the Void Staff. It's actually alright to buy it in certain cases when they have a lot of MR. Generally, you don't want it on Vel'Koz because you have true damage already ingrained in your champion. You deal roughly 25% true damage, and that is considering that the every damage point is equal, where I would argue that it's not. Execution damage points are more value than the basic poke on full health damage points. Now, if you try to apply that, you usually use true damage as execution tool, which makes it slightly more valuable than the other magic damage. Now, that decreases further the value of the Void Staff, but I digress. It's kind of irrelevant, but you will be buying this in 1 to 2% games, generally, if they have a lot of MR. But just keep in mind the 25% value, which is you need extra 25% reason to buy this compared to other champions. Let's say on Orianna, your threshold on buying Void Staff may be 3 characters with 80 MR. Okay, seems plausible, I'm gonna buy this to up my damage. Now for Vel'Koz, you're gonna be like, okay, they have 4 guys and they have 80 MR. Or they have 3 guys with like 110 and they're the targets that I specifically want to kill. Because you have to think about also who you want to kill in the team fight. And yeah, in that case, you can buy Void Staff, but it won't be happening too much. Okay, here, so I'm going to show you just how the basic laning phase goes. Galio is an alright matchup, but early game push, he pushes better, obviously. So we have to kind of watch out on that. And the whole name of the game is neutralizing push. That's a term you will hear often on my stream. And that's when enemies have really good push. You just want to auto attack all the time. This is where attack speed also comes into play. You can notice my attack speed is 0.69. I'm running one of them. And you just want to kind of survive until the level 2, where you can compensate by doing W's. Not only does W push him away from the wave, but it also softens the wave up kind of for your clear, which also makes you get the refund on your Q. So you're not really utilizing too much while getting the CS. Obviously, you want to poke him every time you can, and this is already equalizing the lane, and I'm probably already ahead right now, even though he had that early upper hand. So notice here I'm playing very aggressive. He takes a really bad trade, because Galio never has a chance to kill me there, but I have a critical, I have a lethal here. If I do the proper flash, there you go. It's a really nice angled flash. Now what you want to do is when your opponent is not there, here you want a hard shove immediately, okay? As fast as possible. As fast as possible. Here I notice the wave is not going to go in, but he's not running TP, so I have to immediately cover that. Because if I leave the wave like this, he's going to catch all of these minions and I'm going to lose more. Because that entire wave will die to my wave. So that's just some basic wave management. You generally want to recall on 2 different types of waves. When you either fully bounce it in the enemies, or when it's slow pushing towards you. Those are the 2 best ways to recall. Now the leveling order here, you will notice I only have 2 points in W. It's fine to go either 2 or 3 as long as you can outshove the enemy. Let's say you're playing some really hard push lane that you don't really intend on killing. It's fine, you go 3 points in W, it's totally alright. But 2 is more aggressive variant where you give up, you trade off a little bit of wave management for a potential kill. Given that I'm already ahead, I'm totally fine doing that. So we play very aggressive here. You're really good at controlling mid lane because there's way more angles to play with in mid lane, obviously, because it's not cut off from one side. You can attack from multiple positions and you can use wards to a greater degree of efficiency. So you'll see here what I do is like I have 50 CS. I don't really need to go down bot and just trade myself for Galio. What I try to do is control the mid, hover a gank, and then wait until we restore some pressure. Now, we just have insane power right now. And you want to play that assassin role, as I mentioned. And this is the highest impact you can play mid lane. Now at this point we should probably start attacking other turrets, but Israel's a bit going too aggressive, so we're going to look to kill him. And now we get this mid lane turret, which opens up the entire map. With the second turret mid lane gone, we can just play off of the entire map and do whatever we want. That's a good flash, we get an exit kill. That's how far ahead we are already. Like, Vel'Koz has really good snowball if you get ahead early. The issue is you will almost never get ahead early, okay? Now, anyone can kind of... Now, it's a bit easier to play Vel'Koz when you're really fed, but it's very difficult to get fed as Vel'Koz without your team being fed, because your champ just kind of is not built for that. So you will have to be outsmarting enemies at every step of the way, or out managing the waves until they crack under the pressure. And that's the crux of your gameplay. You play for waves. You play for waves until weakness exposes itself. Then you're going for the kill. Your job in laning phase is almost never to get out with a kill. As just a byproduct, okay? Your job as Vel'Koz is to farm at least equal. And not lose too much prio on the wave management, which means you don't get shoved in too much, because you're really good at shoving. That's why you can go 3 points in W if you're struggling with that. So primary job is to keep enemies pushed in, or at least neutral. Now the more you push them in and more you pressure them, the more mistakes they're going to be making, and that's when you get some kills. And kills are just, again, as we said, they're bonus. You don't necessarily need them to pop off. Okay, now we're going to show like one team fight here, where it's all about positioning. You can pay attention to my positioning and notice how I'm never in that full danger where they're going to destroy me, but I'm just close enough so they think they can. So generally that's what you want to do. You don't have to land all skill shots. It's important that you position well. With good positioning comes everything. Notice how we're here positioning just at the very edge, where they think they got us, but they don't. And it does salvage this kind of like 3v5, 3v4 team fight. Two of our teammates were resetting, so that was obviously supposed to be losing, and that's precisely why they forced. It's a bit dangerous to play there on the edge, but if you know you can bait them, it's kind of good. Now here's one of the best examples of your positioning. It's seemingly lost game. They're looking to end. It's 5v2. Me and Kane cannot defend. We cannot wave clear everything, and we can't kill them. And notice how I'm positioning. Just trying to bait them a little bit, stretch them thin. Because I know they cannot end if they try to kill me in between. And now we have a nice setup where we can chase them down one by one. So the core thing there was just to be out of harm's way. We needed to be outside of the range of engage. And the cleanup is kind of trivial at the end. It nets us a lot of good stuff. So yeah, that was just one example of a mid lane game that we have done with that playstyle. And there's a bunch more on my Twitch TV. You can find VODs, you can find a lot of YouTube videos, either full uploads or basic ones, or even coaching sessions with other people. It's all available, and you can just freely enjoy that and learn more. Hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate you, and I'm going to see you in the next one.